So, Michael and Armand, you've been in the photography space for quite some time. You've done everything from concerts to weddings to, just the whole slew of things with the camera. Both of you are also the hosts of the Cracked Lens podcast, a podcast that focuses on, photography, things with cameras, what it's like being a creative, and that whole lifestyle and all of that entails. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. So I have to ask, what was it like starting photography for each of you? What made you want to kind of go down this journey and choose this life path?
A comes first, you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. Well, I kind of got into it by accident. So the way it started for me was I actually wanted to be a musician first. And this was kind of when YouTube was really popping off, And I was just doing covers on YouTube with this really bad Sony Handycam I found in the closet, right? And then after about a year of doing that, I went and bought an actual camera, right? It was just a Canon 7D. This was a long time ago. This was like 2012, beginning of 2012. And from there, I just, I had the camera, I just kept buying lenses. And, I eventually ended up going to film school. I was supposed to go to music school, but ended up in film school. And just kind of did both, and photography is the one that stuck. I still work in film too, but mainly a photographer, I would say now. And just kind of fell into it by accident.
Sure. Yeah. And what about you, Michael?
I always thought it'd be really cool to do something in photography, but like the way I kind of fell in as a career, I think like the big pivot came. I was living on the road for a little while with an ex. And then I would do photography here and there as like kind of like a side quest, but then work like temp jobs. But I had my son on the way. I lived up in Washington, far from family, and I kind of just like needed to figure it out. So I started using my camera to do more sessions. And then, I don't know, I eventually started doing it all the time. I remember at first, like there's people saying like, oh, you do my wedding. And I turned down like, I think 4, because I was like, that's too much responsibility. And then one day there was a really cool couple in Bakersfield, California, when I moved back there for a bit, and I agreed to do their wedding, and then they fed me really well, and I had a great time, and their response to the pictures was very special. Like they were very emotional, and I was like, I could really keep doing this. And then something I thought that would be like unrealistic and maybe not possible started becoming possible, and it was a huge struggle for the whole beginning portion of my career. I honestly, like, I did as much as I could to put myself out there, but I still felt like I was failing and not making it far. And then, I don't know, I guess like at some point it just changed, and now it's all I do, and I do everything there is to do with a camera, and my life is really cool and stressful and hard and difficult, but like totally worth it. And
Yeah.
I think it was kind of like desperation and just need for money that I started like, I'm like, I need an apartment and I'm dying out here and I have a camera and I need extra cash, and Craigslist is helping me out. So
Like, I'll do anything.
yeah. Much.
I think we've all been there a time or two in our journeys. My story is very similar to yours in all that I kind of fell into photography by accident. Like I was a program manager at Xbox for a couple of years. Mid-pandemic, I just kind of had the existential crisis like most people. And I was like, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Not really. Yeah. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to, become a YouTuber. Let's drop the 6-figure salary, make negative money, and then try to figure out how YouTube works, despite the fact that I've never picked up a camera before. So after 3 years of realizing, one, the payoff in YouTube is incredibly long-tailed, and having no income is not a great place to be. So I was like, I need money. I have a camera. Let's try to meld these two worlds together, which is then why I went into my photo video business. So I definitely understand the struggle of building that photo video business over time. I understand the struggle of like, I need to figure out where $500 is going to come from, and I have a camera. Let's start shopping around and see who needs stuff. So
that's scary too.
Yeah, it is.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's a tough one. When you're in a spot and you're like, I have to make money with this.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than it being like, okay, this is just an artistic endeavor,
Yeah, because at least for me, like I found that beginning space of where if I'm being completely honest, like I did not have marketable skills at that time, but I had the desire to have marketable skills, and just like figuring out how to get experience with no backing and no portfolio. That's a tough place to be. I'm curious of what your story is and how you kind of navigated those initial hurdles.
Ooh, okay, so like I said, I went to film school,
Yeah.
and straight out of film school, like when you're in school, you're already networking with people. So that was a huge, what's the word? Success, I guess. Just networking with people right out of the gate, and it's funny because some of the people I networked with, like I'm still friends with and I'm still working with. Even at being like, 10, 11 years later. And Michael's got a guest in here. Yeah, it's a tough one, or maybe it's not a tough one. I don't know. But I feel like at the time it was a lot easier than it is now, because there was no social media. There wasn't competition from all over the world. There wasn't. It didn't seem like as much of like a global competition thing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas now it's like you can get on Instagram and see the most amazing pictures, right? Like back in the day, we had Flickr and 500px and
DeviantArt.
DeviantArt, and all these, that was literally it. As far as like getting started early on, I don't know. It just kind of happened naturally. Like
Okay.
Facebook groups were huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly where I found like the majority of my work was
Okay.
just Facebook groups.
Facebook.
Yeah. What about you, Michael? So for context, we're chatting about like the struggles of building the business early on, like day zero or the first month, where you essentially have no skills, no portfolio, and you're trying to make this thing work and figure out how to build from there.
Nightmare. Yeah.
It's fucking terrible.
Yeah. For me, man, how did I really? So I had a tiny portfolio just from working with people that I knew for fun, and just kind of building something small. But honestly, like I don't even think about that far back ever, or the quality of that work. But I remember I had a couple pictures and I put them on my main place I started was Craigslist. So
Okay. Yeah.
I would post on Craigslist and try to get work that way, and it worked. I got some really interesting leads and things that happened, but mostly, just like finding lifestyle type portraits and then eventually weddings through like Craigslist. And then I would hustle on Facebook too back in the day, but I don't really go on Facebook anymore. So
yeah. I'd like to add on to that because, I started my career in 2012, but then 2017, I decided to go full time into photography and not really do as much in film, even though I'm kind of like, working in film again just because money.
Yeah.
I decided to go all in on photography in 2017. I wanted to do travel photography, like travel and landscape. And, honestly, for the first 3 years, there was like no clients. There was nothing. I sold everything. I moved in with my parents, and I just traveled. And eventually 2020, I got my first big client. And they were licensing my landscape photos for a couple of years, and then last year they went under, and that project is out the window now. But yeah, like I think starting up is probably the hardest.
Yeah, well, like building a portfolio when there's already such it's a very saturated market, and there's a lot of photographers trying to make their way. It's like it's all just a big gamble when it begins, and you have to like really commit. And like I think like a lot of the things when I was trying to switch into full-time photography in my life, and I wanted to commit that time to doing that and not doing other things, like played a really heavy role on my personal life and the relationships that I had and things like that. So it's like I don't know, there's a lot of sacrifice involved, I think, with beginning a creative career like that, and it's really scary, and there's no promise at the end. There's no like light at the end of the tunnel. It could just be darkness. And I've seen so many people that I've met like give up or like that. It's not for me at all. But and there were a lot of times too, like in my career pathway, especially back like because I I say my official start date was like the beginning of 2016, but I'd been shooting before that as well. But then that's where I was like really trying to transition in fully. And there was a lot of times back then where I was like, this just isn't viable. This is not going to work. I should probably stop. Then I'm just like, no, I'm stubborn. I'm going to keep pushing. And I still like it builds like a trauma too. And that I'm still like, it's all going to fall apart. It's all going to go away. There's no stability. I should just like not do this.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because even though my portfolio is all like travel and landscape, and I wasn't making any money for like 3 years, that work is like actually getting me jobs now that I'm like networking
awesome.
and I'm trying to push the business a lot further. And I think it really just comes down to like technique and just like showing people that you know what you're doing with the camera, right? Like I've gotten so many like corporate like headshot shoots and portrait shoots and like all this other work just from like the landscapes.
Yeah, like obviously you know what you're doing with the camera.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
You look legit too because your portfolio is all over the place. So it's like,
yeah.
yes.
I mean, if you go to my website, it's like landscape, travel, whole portrait, commercial. And then I'm like, oh, I'm also a digitech, and it's like, I wear like all these hats, So, so I think
as any creative has to.
Yeah, as any creative has to do.
You're not just a photographer. You're like 40 different hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the struggle I dealt with. So when I had my job at Microsoft, I had like the one job. I say one loosely; it's a lot underneath, but one job. But then when I started my photography business, now I have to learn how taxes work and marketing and admin stuff and web design, in addition to actually doing the thing that I'm trying to do. So it's a lot.
Why the hell am I doing math right now?
Yeah, I just want to click things on a camera. I just want it to be simple. But yeah,
percentages for impressions from like okay, so this is getting this much money from this marketing thing, which means that this is like this 1.2%. I'm like, what the?
It's all the craziness of being a small business owner and just having to deal with that facets of like running a profession. It's challenging. The beginnings of both of your careers sound fairly similar to mine in that, like, similar to you, I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning, and I kind of just took any job that I possibly could. What I found, for context, I started this in early 2022, so I'm very new to the game still.
Yeah.
But I realized that I live in Seattle and there was a market for real estate photographers because a bunch of agents would post on like Facebook and be like, hey, our photographer backed out. Can someone come today? So I saw a bunch of those posts and I'm like, okay, how hard can real estate photography be? And the answer is, to get into it, the bar is incredibly low. To do exceptionally well, it's high, but the barrier to entry is quite low. So just get a wide lens, figure out your angles in a room, and then it's pretty much a formula at some point, exposed properly, and just make everything look all pretty and bright. So I did that for a while just so I can get a portfolio underneath me. And I even did a bunch of houses for free for various real estate agents. Now I know that's a controversial take for some people, but I think that's one of the better routes to do it, because if you're just trying to get your name out there and get experience, it's a lot more palatable to people. So I did that for maybe like 3 months and I built up a portfolio, and then eventually I pivoted into the things that I wanted to do, like events and concerts and circus and, performance-based things. But I just had to kind of prove that I was competent with the camera first and get some portfolio underneath me. And then I slowly started to tack on the other stuff. So sounds similar to your story, Armand.
Yeah.
I remember doing I did real estate photography for a while too. And I have a drone only because I don't even use it, but I got it because I thought I was going to use it for real estate photography. And now I'm just afraid to fly it because I almost crashed it. But then I still was facing like, other walls, like, because people that wanted the whole real estate package also wanted like Matador, like tours and stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm not ready to invest in that. And then it kind of like stopped. But I remember also trying to do real estate photography. It was a big challenge because the barrier to entry is low, but so many real estate agencies had like people they've been working with for 20 years or
there's always a guest that will pop up. There are 4 cats roaming this house.
Nice.
No, but But yeah, and what you said too about the controversial, like doing it for free, like it's hard because yeah, I always like disagree with doing it for free, but at the same time in the beginning, like how do we get ahead? But then I feel like if you, um, like even if you do it for free, like people will do real estate photography for free, but people aren't going to do like other types of photography for free. So that's part of the reason why like I'll even avoid things like real estate now because everyone tries to break into it.
Yeah, it's so hard in the beginning because like you almost have to do it for free.
But everyone's doing it for free, so then people will use everyone because they
Correct.
can find
Yeah.
it for $50 or free or whatever.
I feel like
Mhm.
it's almost better to just do it on your own for free rather than taking on a client for free. You know what I mean?
Like
Yes.
CFP,
Yeah, kind of like that.
Trade
So
for
it's
trade.
not like you're starting off the relationship as like, okay, I'm doing this for free because then they're just going to expect cheap or free.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
you can't jump from free to 600. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, I mean,
Yeah.
$70 for 4 hours.
Like-
So,
Yeah, honestly, it would be more worth it to just go get like a decent, cheap looking Airbnb for like a day and then just shoot it and just use it as your
I see what you're
portfolio.
saying. Get really
Yeah.
pretty Airbnbs.
Yeah,
too.
just get a really cool looking Airbnb and then go and pitch that, and then you've made your money back plus some, hopefully. And then
Yeah,
just
it's not a bad
go
idea.
on from there.
No one even teaches this kind of stuff either, though. So
Yeah.
it's,
Like these are the tips that I haven't found online. Everyone talks about technique. Everyone says like, "Hey, this is how you do the thing with the camera." No one talks about like the negotiation aspects of like trying to find the client and maneuver those things or build your portfolio from like day one scratch. Yeah.
it takes so long to like open your eyes to like how the market is too. Like I'm only now that I'm in a studio, like realizing like how things really work out there.
Yeah.
That I'm like, oh, like we all have to collectively work together as an industry to control the market, because if we don't, then people will say like, I want this crazy session, my budget is $50, and 300 people will flock to them to say,
Yeah.
yes, please, like because the
Yeah.
barrier is so low.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because like in this ocean of photographers, like they don't even see the actual people who are like true professionals have been doing it and hustling. They just go find any weekend photographer with a camera and they say,
Mhm.
yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
So it's rough out there, but that's
Yeah.
the game.
The solution that I found to this is to develop relationships with people that would consistently need photography. So one of the other reasons why I chose real estate is so long as that agent is working, they're going to need photos. And that's a recurring thing that I can somewhat rely on, assuming the relationship is good, as opposed to something like a wedding, which is a lot of money at once, but presumably that couple is not going to get married again, right? So I tried to look for recurring things that I can kind of capitalize on. And once I have that nice relationship built, then hopefully I get to keep it and maintain it. So I can kind of have a consistent source of income doing that thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you get lucky, a wedding could be a recurring thing.
I mean,
yeah, the same exact thought process as you though. It's like, so if I can just like, so for me in wedding world, like that same thought process has kind of moved from a real estate agent will always hire me for their real estate gigs
Mhm.
to, okay, well then how do I get in with, okay, planners and
yes.
venues, stuff like that. So it's always, and in any industry too, it's about establishing relationships, especially
Mhm.
like you're on your own path and they're on their own path. But if you could benefit each other, then that's like something that we should all focus on, is the relationships we have. And for starting photographers, I think one of the best things to do is like, we look at other photographers a lot of time like competition, obviously not in this circle here, but like a lot of photographers are that I've heard and I hear about from other people's experience, they're like closed off to one another and it's very like competition. So we say community over competition all the time.
Yeah.
And like for people trying to get into weddings, instead of just throwing yourselves into a wedding and potentially ruining someone's day, going out as a second and getting experience and like kind of finding someone to mentor you and work with and things like that is like the way to get your portfolio built. I didn't do that. I jumped into weddings and I'm happy that worked out well, but I've heard a lot of horror stories too.
So that was like a different time though.
Yeah.
Like 2016 is very different from
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah. But that's how I got into the wedding route too, exactly like you described. In terms of like second shooting and kind of, getting my feet wet while having a more experienced photographer really lead the thing, just so I can understand what the environment is like. Because I can only imagine how terrifying it is to go in as like the lead photographer or the only photographer and have this be like your first or second time, because there are so many variables that come your
Dude,
way that just
yeah.
completely unexpected. So yeah.
Told the story before, but the first wedding I ever did, I like got to the venue and I knew it was an art museum, but like all the lights, like they like were on a rod that comes off the wall and the light points back at the art on the
Yep,
wall,
yep.
and everything was dark in the center. And I was like,
This is like gallery lighting.
this is fucking horrible. And obviously I don't have like the equipment I do now. I was like
Yeah.
with my startup kit and I was sweating balls the whole time. I was so scared. And I was like really self-conscious about some of the images in there that I had.
Uh-huh.
I'm very cool, like a lot of us are. And then I remember like because of all of that, I like went to meet with a couple and I sat down with the grooms and we like looked through their pictures and one of them, he just like started crying and was just like, dude, this is super awesome. It's everything I could have hoped for. And I was like,
oh, thank God. Whew.
and after that too, I was like, so it's really, and it's not like with photography, a lot of times, like we look at like the quality, like it has, and obviously you should have high quality, but sometimes too, even you have some leeway with like weddings or special things because you can throw all those extras in there that are just moments. They may not be like the most technically sound picture in the world, but you're just being that experience and knowing what to look for is huge, right? So,
Yeah. I can't remember who said this, but one of my favorite quotes in regards to photography is that the frame is more important than the picture. And what the intent behind that is, like, the context in which the picture exists is more important than the picture itself. And the analogy I always give is like for a wedding. So let's say you have, a stereotypical guy in a nice tuxedo and then a woman in a nice white dress. Unless you're the couple in that picture or you know them, that picture doesn't really mean anything to you. Sure, it may look nice, but like it's forgettable. It's whatever. But if you are the couple, even if the quality isn't great, it's still of you capturing a special moment in time, expressing your love for each other. So even if it looks like it was taken with a potato, that picture holds so much value over any of the other pictures that are objectively higher quality, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, I think, like you said, there's something special to that, to those special moments, and the quality can take a dip, and that's okay, so long as the emotion is captured.
Yeah, I sometimes will stop and think about like, okay, well, I am self-conscious about quality, and I want it to be the best it's going to be, but at the same time, I'm like, what are my favorite pictures of me? Like, if I can look into my own world, and like, what are my favorite pictures of me? And they're like Instax pictures that are just like, it's just of that moment and that time. And I love those pictures more than I love the high quality ones of me sometimes because of the context, right?
Yeah.
Or my kids with me or my girlfriend or whatever it is, like pictures of my family back home from before, like this just taken on a DSLR in the backyard or a cell phone. And it's just like, yeah, that's what those people in those type of situations, they want people who can capture like authenticity anyways. So, and no matter what kind of photography you do, it's just different things you have to focus and look for. But I feel like weddings, or special things like that. Anyways,
No, I got you. It's so funny. Like, people ask me a lot, like, hey, is photography hard? Or like, what aspect of photography do you enjoy the most? And it's difficult. It's kind of like saying, oh, I'm a cook and I make food. I'm like, okay, well, that can be anything. Do you run a food truck? Do you run a Michelin star restaurant?
Are we talking presentation or are we talking like flavor right now? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Like mass quantity, or is it like a $300 plate? Like what department here?
Yeah, it's a great question because, the people ask me, like, what kind of photography should I get into? I'm like, well, what do you enjoy? Because modeling and boudoir is very different than weddings, which is very different than product photography, which is very different than concerts. I feel like there's infinite depth to any of these areas, and there's really so many paths people can take as a photographer, depending on their interests.
Yeah, the insane thing about photography is you can literally photograph anything.
Yeah, literally anything.
So like, it is truly endless. Like, what are we all here to do? And so when people are like, I'm a photographer, it's like, you're also a human. What kind of human?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the cool part of it too, though, especially if you like some people will try to force you into a niche and to do one thing. And I completely disagree. Like, especially with Instagram, like, oh, my Instagram is this, so I am this. But like, I find I learn so much from doing different styles of photography, and then I can bring the things I've learned back into the other one. It makes me like exponentially better. Like concerts and low light photography, when you're thrown into it and you don't have a choice, and you're like, can't use flash, low aperture. And then I take that to a wedding, and I'm like, dude, I learned because of this thing that I should do this. And then same from weddings, you learn how to do things in all these other departments, and so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Utilize that everything aspect to it too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think niching down isn't really the move anymore.
It's a
like
bottleneck.
yeah, like it used to be, but now I think shooting so many different genres of photography is a huge plus.
Mhm.
You know, because then you have so many different markets to cater to.
Yeah. It still creates a challenge with your presentation though, but
Of course.
it's
I don't think yes and no, because like, shooting landscapes, there's so many variables, right? And there's so many different techniques and stuff you can use, and I can apply all that to like shooting portraits.
yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, like to market and present yourself, sometimes it creates a challenge 'cause people get a little confused. But like
I would say, you know what, yes and no. I feel like if your portfolio is good, it almost doesn't matter what genre it is, or at least that's what I found.
yeah,
Because like,
you've had those experiences.
yeah, so like I get hired to shoot like corporate headshots and photo shoots, and I don't have any portfolio for that.
The way you're saying it too, like, yeah, I guess because like sometimes people will be like, because my wedding work is like very naturalistic kind of, but then
Mhm.
sometimes the selling point isn't any of that. It's when they go to my other site and they're like, oh, you do like dark, gloomy, hired for my
Yeah.
bright and airy wedding.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I think the message is you just have to be a really good photographer now.
yeah,
Yeah.
diversity is like
Yeah.
a plus. Yeah,
Yeah, diversity, just having like really good photos will almost get you hired for anything, because most people that are going to hire you to shoot photos aren't creative people themselves.
they trust. Yeah, they're like,
They're just like,
"Can
oh, you look
do
like,
this?"
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
they're just like, oh, you look like you know what you're doing.
But like you said about aesthetics, like if someone likes your shooting style and they like how you present certain things, then they'll hire you for most everything else because you have that emotion that they're trying to capture, right?
Yeah.
And you've proven it through your portfolio. At least for me, to kind of piggyback what you said about like diversity in like or power in learning diverse areas of photography. I got my start in real estate photography, but right after that, I went into fire spinning photography, which
Yeah,
I think is one of the hardest things I've ever done with a camera, and it's not even close.
I know,
Just
really.
because
Fun.
yeah, you have extremely bright brights, extremely dark darks. It's moving. The fire is alive. Constantly changing lighting conditions as dancers move around with it. You have to get very good at timing your shots because for one fraction of a second, the fire looks great, and the next fraction of a second, it looks like a blob. So
Yeah,
you have to get really good at timing stuff, and you have to be extremely comfortable with your manual settings. So like that was the crucible in which like I really honed my craft. And a couple of years later, someone hired me to just kind of take pictures of like a corporate event, couple speakers on a well-lit stage with controlled lighting. And they're like, hey, is this something up your alley? I'm like, yeah, I can do this in my sleep. This is
I can do that.
Hey, but good thing you shoot Sony, so all those like highlights and shadows aren't a problem.
Yo, what's up?
That's great, mind you.
Autofocus is fantastic. Yeah, I gotcha.
There you go. Autofocus is fantastic in low light.
I'm already starting with the camera coral. Okay.
Yeah, I love talking about camera gear.
Yeah.
Hilarious to me. So you mentioned you've done a bunch of weddings in the past. You've dabbled in real estate photography. What made you want to start your photo studio, Michael?
Actually, so I always knew, like, even when I was young, I knew one day this would be really cool, but like it literally was always like a pipe dream. I don't have like a bunch of money or like crazy wealthy family that will just like buy me a building or do whatever. Like I knew I would have to like get there somehow. And so I always figured it would be like, kind of a more like a retirement era sort of thing. And also, it would have been a terrible retirement plan now that I know what you have to do that would suck ass. But, I actually, so we were doing, my girlfriend and I, we host these like group community meetups called Dark Hive. And it was around the era where we were kind of like getting more and more into that, and we're growing, that I came with my girlfriend because she models to the studio under the previous owner. And it was for like a bridal workshop, which I hate, by the way, because it's like misleading for couples. But she agreed for a friend that she'd come in, and it was for the dresses and all that. And the previous owner was in here with like an emo shirt on, and I was like, okay, cool band. And she was like just here to be with the studio, and I was like, let's go start a conversation. And I told her, I've always thought it'd be really cool to open a studio like down the line at Cobalt Studios. I love the name. I've always wanted to open Crimson Studios, so I find it interesting because the contrast and the colors. But
Yeah.
I made a joke like, if you ever want to expand or make the studio bigger, like, we should talk. And then some odd months later, she was just wanting to get out of here, and I knew she reached out to come sit in private and talk about it. We weren't allowed to talk about it for a while, but she was like, I want to sell you the studio. And I was like, well, like, I don't have the kind of money. And then she's like, no, we'll front a loan, and like, I just want to get it into the hands of someone who's going to take care of it. And I was like,
good for you.
we'll go find the money and make this happen. And we got into this space, and it happened way sooner than I thought. And honestly, so it's been over a year now. It's been under our care, and it's just been like this insane dream come true, honestly.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And so,
yeah, I think you told me in like April or May, and then you got it in October.
Yeah, and it was
That
like the
is
whole
fast.
And we
Yeah,
had,
it's really fast.
we had a baby we found out we're gonna have a baby at the same time. It's like, all right, it's gonna be a lot of management because I have 11-year-old, 8-year-old as of this month. They just turned a little older, and then an 8-month-old now at home. So it's been a wild.
Yeah.
a
Okay.
wild-
Okay.
Yeah, but honestly, it was just like a little bit of luck and a lot of community. And we have a really beautiful, humbling community that we've been building up here. That's like, and then through other communities we met, like there was a group called Portland Shooters, and one of the people that ran that, Cody, we went to one of those, and that's where I met like Armand and our other friends, David. And then we did our group meetups, and it was really just community that led us to this point where someone offered us another position, and we said yes and took it and gambled our safety and our life away a little bit. And it was the scariest decision literally ever, because like, overhead and bills and stuff, like, are we going to survive? The numbers don't even look that good. Let's take on this risk, and we're here. We didn't.
It seems like a bad idea. This
is a really bad idea. Honestly, let's try it. It was like a really bad good idea, but yeah.
That's an awesome story. One, congratulations. That's amazing. Yeah. I know you, in the short time that we spent chatting, like, you seem to work incredibly hard at your craft. This thing matters to you a lot. The passion is clearly there. And I'm glad that you had the opportunity to, embrace that a little bit more. That's really great.
Yeah. And I guess too, what I like to say, because when I jumped into this space, I wasn't a huge studio shooter. I had like a mild understanding of lights. And I knew it was something I want to work with more, but it was always like on the back burner. Right. And I would stick to like natural light and stuff like that. But being in a space and using lights and really learning how to like own lighting and like control your situation, you're not limited. You can kind of create whatever you envision once you figure it out, is the most liberating feeling ever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the weather's like. I don't have to wait on anything. If I wanted to do a studio type shoot and control the light, like, I strongly encourage photographers to like jump past that I'm a natural light photographer vibe and like just try to control a little bit too sometimes if you're comfortable. Dude, it's life changing. And then you get comfortable and you take your lights outside too, and then you're like, oh, I can now manipulate the situation. Yes. So
yeah, it's funny because a lot of photographers, their dream is just to own pro photo lights.
Yeah.
Right. And then now you have
5 of them.
Now you have 5 of them plus the studio.
Yeah. And so but also too, it was like extremely overwhelming. It was like super crash course, and I learned a lot really quick, but also very fortunate because people come in here we rent the space out.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people that use it have been shooting a lot longer than I have.
Yeah.
And they're very comfortable with allowing me to sit in, and I can try to like assist.
Ooh.
And I learn so much from just watching the people, and like, so it's been an insanely cool year. But then I hope to take that knowledge and like share it with others that I'm meeting in the community. And so we'll do like workshops, and when people come in that are like, I actually was just going to come in here and figure it out, but I'm a little overwhelmed, I can be like, let me show you what I've learned and get people set up. And then I see people all the time, they'll be like, this is the coolest shoot I've ever done. Like, I cannot wait to learn more. And it's like such a cool feeling and experience to see people literally like feel like they're entering their next level. And I'm just like, this is so much fun.
Proud dad moment.
Yeah, proud dad moment.
That's awesome. Yeah. One of the dreams that I have and hopefully would like to achieve in the next 10 years is opening up a studio to where people can kind of come in and experiment. You know, in like a rock climbing gym, everyone kind of comes in, you have a day pass, there's a bunch of routes on the wall. You take turns, but you can kind of go and try stuff. You can mess with different techniques, play with different stuff. I'm envisioning something similar, kind of like like a playground for photographers. You have a couple of like little studio setups, a couple of different rooms, and you have a bunch of equipment on demand, bunch of props and whatever, and say, have at it, go nuts, go practice some technique. Because I'm sure you're very well aware, and for those listening, they may not be, camera equipment is real fucking expensive. From the lenses to the cameras to the lights to essentially anything involved with a camera is just ungodly expensive.
Yeah,
so it's very hard to have this equipment be accessible to a lot of people. So I would love to have a studio that acts like a playground where people can kind of come in and practice, hone their technique, and it doesn't cost them thousands of dollars of an upfront investment.
Yeah, and that's something actually to an extent we try to offer here. It's like we have like 2 rooms, right? But we keep the lights mostly in this main room that we're kind of in, and it extends that way where you can't see off camera. But when we do our workshops and stuff here, there's a lot of encouragement to like sometimes we'll like guide and we're kind of doing this, but we always kind of keep it loose because I learned from doing things on my own. So I'm like, they're like, what if? I'm like, don't what if me. Go for it. Like, literally try it. And if you have any questions along the way, like, I'm here to support you. But if I just step back and let people do it, like, they get to learn. I love that idea because that's how we learn, is not being like handheld and walked through it. It's like, no, figure it out. I'll tell you this lighting's doing this because of this, the way we have it set, but you want it like this. I'll give you a little guidance, but bye. And they figure it out and they feel accomplished too. So it's cool.
Yeah. I think that's the best teaching style, or at least the one that resonates with me the most. Because like you said, I've learned the most by the mistakes that I've made, or I try something that I think conceptually works, but in actual practice just falls completely flat. And then now I have to figure out that disconnect. And then that concept, that learning is just invaluable for the other things that I do going forward.
100%. Like, I feel like all the strongest lessons I have is from just completely fucking up and biffing something and then being like, oh man, now what? Because I always say this, even like outside of weddings, like, or outside of photography, like in weddings, like people like try to plan their wedding day. And I'm like, you need to leave more buffer or not plan so hard, because nothing ever goes according to plan. And it's the same at a photo shoot. Like, you try to overplan and you're just going to get wrecked in the end. And one thing's going to go wrong and ruin that whole specific vision. So you have to leave like a pretty decent amount of like room for improv or improvising like what you're going to do, and lose creativity as you go, right? So
pretty much.
Yeah. So let's try to find some concise tips for some photographers listening. So if you're a photographer in 2025, what are some things that you should be doing, and what are some things that you should not be doing?
Yeah. Okay. So what you should be doing, improving your technique.
Yeah.
And I've always gone with the mentality of, I never compare myself to others. I always think like, okay, this person's doing it like this, I'm going to do it better than them.
Yeah.
Right.
Friendly competition.
Yeah. Friendly. I mean, whether I know them or not, I'm just going to like, if I'm replicating like a portrait shoot, for example, I'm going to take like a general idea of what it is, and I'm just going to make it my own and make it better.
Because people will copy all the time, but like, what does that really do? Like, you're just trying to make
it's just a bunch of copycats. Like, I'll use other things as inspiration, but I'll never like straight up copy something,
Yeah.
It's also the best way to learn too, is taking someone's work, like when you're trying to learn and like, okay, how'd they do that? And then trying to like reverse engineer. Yeah. But then you're like, all right, well, then let's add this touch and make it like that much more dynamic or cool. Now it's got more pop depth and
like, when I was starting to shoot portraits early on, I was replicating a lot of Lindsay Adler's work and Brooke Shaden, taking a lot of inspiration from them and just, kind of making it my own. And then just like other like random things I'd find on Instagram. But maybe that's another tip is don't put all of your eggs into Instagram.
True.
That's a huge one. Absolutely.
Don't like Instagram is not the end all be all for photographers. If anything, it's going away because everyone just keeps losing interest.
Honestly, like, and even really quick on that, like I've seen how things have gone like growth wise on Instagram, and we're doing more and more, but we're starting to see less and less because people are falling off or getting split to other platforms. And so,
and like, I think, go ahead.
I'll say focus on a website and SEO before you focus on it. Still do your Instagram and all that. That's honestly, sadly vital. I'm not even very good at it. I know it's vital and there'd be more business if I did it, but it's like, I think website and something that's forever lasting, and building rank in that is far more important than some social media platform.
You know what? I'm going to throw a controversial topic out, or not topic, but tip out there. And that's do the job that nobody wants to do.
Yeah.
So that's actually a really good way to get jobs.
You want to get noticed too, like do the hard shit.
So what I mean by that is like, let's say you're a photographer, right? You want to, book more work, right? So number one, obviously you need a good portfolio, but also shoot video because nobody wants to do video. Everybody just wants to be a photographer, but video is like such an important thing now, right? And digiteching. Right,
yeah, if you're trying to go like an e-commerce or corporate world, you can start with digital.
Yeah, like e-com or video, like digiteching. No, number one, it pays a lot.
So for those unaware, myself included, actually, what is digiteching?
So digiteching is okay. Have you seen it? Like photo shoots, there'll be like the guy behind the computer, like with the camera tethered into it.
Yeah.
Like running capture one and all that. So that's what a digitech is. You're just organizing everything. You're setting up monitors for clients. You're checking exposure and focus, like, all these things, right? Sometimes you're even retouching on set, right? But doing these jobs will ultimately get you other jobs because people might come to you and be like, oh, we need a photographer. Can you do this? Right? And that's actually one way I've gotten a lot of photography jobs is by doing other jobs that I didn't want to do. Yeah. So being versatile, I guess.
Versatility.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. I have a very similar experience as a production assistant in the video space. Like you just show up, you gain the skills to at a lesser stress level and risk because you're not leading everything. But these are vital skills. But also it puts you around the people that are the movers and shakers in that particular industry in whatever city you might be in. And then you get to learn off them, you get to brush shoulders. You essentially just kind of exist in their mind so that when they do want to call on someone or a spot opens up, you now have the skills because they watched you do it if they didn't personally teach you. And you have that relationship that you can now, kind of capitalize on so you can get that job. Great advice.
It's like, it can be all about like who you know or networking. And that's a huge thing. And so like, I guess my advice too would be like, one would be like, focus on your network and the people around you. I worked so many years where I like was not connecting with other creatives at all. And I was very in my own route and it felt like such a sludge pit where I was just like, man, this, first of all, I'm lonely. I have no one to talk to about my experiences and what I go through. And that sucked. So like personal life was feeling drab because of it. And then I didn't have anyone to like bounce ideas off of or learn from. So growing your network and meeting your local other creatives and feeling like you have coworkers is like, and you learn so much faster. Like you learn from them, they learn from you, you support each other. That is vital. And then you can help to keep standards in your local area too, which is really important. You're not out there undercutting each other and stuff like that. And then another thing that kind of goes along with something you said is like, that essentially, like I say, complacency is the death of mastery. So just don't be complacent. Like you have to be versatile in multiple different ways, whether it's like taking on different styles of jobs or in your photography, kind of like we mentioned earlier. do different kinds of work so you learn from other things. Don't be like, I want to be this, and then you put all your eggs into that basket, because even if it's what you know you want to do, I want to be a fashion photographer, and you're going to all the runways and doing all this stuff. If you're like really building and only doing that one kind of thing, then you're not going to think like, oh, I should add this into it, because you're like too focused on that one thing. So definitely try other stuff in the photography realm as well, and branch out.
Yeah, I'm going to add two things onto that. I think like relationships and networking are absolutely number one.
Final.
I would actually put that above technical skill for photography.
Same.
Yeah, honestly.
Because there's so many working professionals that suck. Like, there's so many people's work that is just bad, and they're making tons of money. Like their work just looks like HDR.
Yeah.
Where it's like overly sharpened and weirdly saturated and all this stuff, and they're making so much money and their clients like it. Okay. So it's really about who you know, not what you know.
Yeah. And then I guess the same thing with that. It's like on less of a personal note, like I know these people and their following and stuff like that. I don't think that even we're the best at any of the social media stuff, but it is good.
Whoa, no.
I'm
supposed to say we're the best.
The best in the world ever exist. Yeah.
World.
There we go.
Social media presence.
Exactly.
I have a really hard time with social media presence personally. But like if there were a piece of advice and something that I know anytime where I've committed a little more time in doing that, it is good to do. But at the same time, you were talking about comparison. Yeah. I don't do social media as much because I know, and a lot of people that are artists are similar. And I see this all the time where people can get really, really ruined from being on social media a lot. And it burns you out, I'd say, faster than just about anything else. And I get really tired out from everything that we have to do to keep up with like life and work. But social media is the number one downer for me. So I personally don't really go there as often because I start to compare and I'm like, are we just not doing good enough? Or like, what's the fucking point? But if you're someone who can stomach social media in a healthy way, definitely also focus on that network as well. But make sure that you're trying to make like real life connections from it. I don't think that people should just go on with this main purpose to have 200,000 followers. Who cares where they are? Who cares what they do? I just want followers. Yep. It should be like hearty, wholesome relationships with people. And like to the point where if you have the time to go in and comment on their work too, and give support and have support back, then you like meet these life, and you might even meet them in real life one day too. Hopefully, like that's the goal for me with social media, is to use it as a bring people in, but still to utilize it to create more connection.
Yeah, I don't know if you can even make a full-time living as just a photographer anymore.
Yeah,
like
very hard. Yeah,
I mean, I know there's people that do it, of course, but I feel like it's becoming harder and harder. Like you just have to wear so many different hats.
I know, so I make everything from photography. And then the studio exists, and a lot of the studio rentals cover most of the studio space. And sometimes there's some that even comes out of pocket from photography work. But that life is, I'm lucky enough to have my girlfriend who does, a lot of the non-shooting work. Like she's helping with like emails and event organization and
got it.
With a million hats, right? Like, and she takes half of them off and wears them herself. And so I'm lucky enough to have that, but most people that are working as a photographer by themselves, like it would be so fucking hard to do that because of the market out there, especially that, it's rarer and rarer.
Yeah.
And I know a couple people, but it's not like we're out here making multi-millions,
Yeah. Okay. So
people do, but
so for example, I do photography.
Yeah.
Like I color films and commercials. I digitech, I fly the drone, I do time lapses.
Yeah.
Now I do video, I'll shoot like weddings and
if I want video
and all that.
So
it's like I'm wearing all these hats, and it's like when one thing is slow, the other one picks it up. So you just have to keep trying,
especially when you're on the way to doing full-time photography. Even like you do a lot of things related to media creation.
It's all related,
the whole beginning of my career, like I think even after 2016 for a little bit too, like instead of just doing photography, I would be like, well, I have some downtime because it's a slow week. So I'd like buy a Craigslist card and fix it and sell it or something like that, or just
Mhm.
flip it because I know I
Yeah.
could see a profit in it. And I would do like other stuff on the side. So you just got to kind of wear as many hats as you can still put on, right?
Yeah.
Preferably in media creation though,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
that's
preferably.
work with
And
more people in the same world. But
yeah, I mean, I know I just listed off like 5, 6 things, but it's all related in the same world, you know.
but
Yeah.
it's
Just try to maximize your skills.
it's hard to, and you always got to hustle. Like that, not everyone does this, but me, like no matter where I go, if I see an opportunity to talk about photography and hand my card out, I'm that annoying fucking guy. But it works.
It
all the
does.
time.
It absolutely
Like,
does.
yeah, I met you at Pete's Coffee, and like you just gave me a card, and now I need this or something, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it works. So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So marrying the two concepts that you guys just mentioned to my own personal experience, like I just recently am about to hit the break-even point where I can consider like I have a full-time income from photography, but for
Yeah.
all the years leading up to it, no, I had to supplement it. So I had to take odd jobs. I helped my friend do like construction work. I currently run a full-time pet sitting business out of my house with my girlfriend, and
Yeah,
for a long time, up until very recently, that was the majority of my income, and now
Yeah.
I'm starting to have photography, pull ahead, and I attribute the only reason why I'm able to do that is because I exist in the mind share of a lot of people intentionally. If they say, hey, that's Jason, they immediately relate it to camera. So I put Jason, camera, Jason, camera, Jason, camera. So these things are pretty much synonymous in people's heads. And the diversity of skill set that you mentioned there, because like Jason camera is incredibly broad. You can do a billion things with a camera. So underneath that, it's like, oh, Jason does wedding photography. He does, product shoots. He does event photography. He also does videography. So if I need anything that involves a camera, I'm going to go to Jason first. And if he can't do it, he knows someone who can. But I'm going to go to Jason first.
they're like,
And that's
camera?
how that tide, right? But that's how that tide has started to shift in my favor. But it took years to get to that point.
It's gonna take more time, but it like all of a sudden, and because it takes so long too, once you start to get more people reaching out, you're like, is this even real? But it happens. It just literally takes time and commitment, and then it becomes more and more lucrative. You got to get there and be patient. And people tell me all the time, like, you need to just be more patient because like we're gonna want it to change now, and it's not going to. But just keep hustling and keep doing it, and then there it goes, right? And then we got to do everything we can to brand our photography. Like that's why we even like try to talk to photographers and have podcasts too. It's like
Yeah.
so we can educate and help, but also so we can grow. So
Have you guys heard of the 10,000 hour rule?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if anybody listening doesn't know what that is, it's basically like the concept is it takes 10,000 hours to like master something, right? Which equates to about 10 years. And I feel like that's pretty true.
yeah, honestly,
because like I've been at photography for 12 years now, and I'm now just seeing the benefits of it.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the only job I've ever had. I've never done any other jobs. It's only been in photo and video.
Specialty,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, so to kind of go off that 10,000 hour rule, like I found like it's 10,000 hours, but of like diligent practice. Because at least for me, like I've been playing guitar since I was, 14. I'm 31 now. And I reached this massive plateau like 6 years in because I just kept playing the same things over and over again. I was like, oh, okay, I know these, 30 songs. I know how to strum a couple chords, and I never really like took the time to like get good. Like, hey, sweep picking is a thing. For those who are unaware, a more advanced technique of playing the strings.
You guys,
But okay, fantastic. But like the diligent practice thing. So going back to a point that you made earlier, don't be complacent in your skill sets and your techniques. You have to improve these and be mindful and intentional about them too.
The death of mastery. You just gotta keep changing it up.
You know what? I can relate to that because I felt like last year I'd also kind of like hit a plateau, with my guitar playing. I've been playing for 20 years now. I mean, I've always been like, like really good at it, but I wanted to get to that like next level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just tried learning like the absolute hardest music I could find.
Yeah. If you
And
wanna,
it helps so much. I feel like I can literally play anything now.
same if you want to
There you
get
go.
better with photography, you need to go and shoot fire dancers or
There you
a
go.
metal concert in a shittily lit venue or something where
Yeah.
you have like a
Yes.
where you can stand it and you
Yeah,
gotta
you just
figure
have
out,
to like challenge yourself.
really got to push
Just
it.
keep trying new things, challenging yourself. You know, like with landscape photography, I had never shot storm chasing before, right?
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
So I went to Arizona when they had the monsoons, and I went and shot some thunderstorms.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that helped for another, you know, storm we had here. And I got like one of the coolest photos I've ever
Well,
taken.
now you're like learning
Like,
how to like track the sky and what to
yeah,
do and
so
where to
then
go.
then you learn about how to,
Just gotta do it.
yeah, you just got to do it.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
all
the
these
thing.
techniques that you learn. Go ahead, please.
Don't sit at home and just think about it. Just literally go out and do it.
Yeah, there's the advice. Stop like saying you gotta do it. Shut the
Yeah.
fuck up and go do it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like if you're going to school and you're afraid to talk to the girl, like just go up
Just
and
go
do
say
it.
hi.
Just
Yeah,
go
yeah.
say hi. Just
Hello.
go do it.
Get slapped in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love you.
Ooh, I'm actually so slight tangent on this. I'm curious if you had this experience too, because like you said earlier, social media it's very easy to burn out on that. I'm terrible at it, despite knowing its power and how important it is. But I kind of stumbled upon this by accident. So I mentioned that I take a bunch of pictures of fire dancers, and a
Nope.
lot of people in those pictures, the subjects, they really like showing themselves doing the cool thing. It's part of it is ego, part of it is like, hey, come look at the thing. They want to share their craft and their passion, but regardless, they share the pictures. So I've put my watermark in a lot of these in fairly obvious places, but I make it subtle so it's not in your face.
Yeah.
But what I've experienced over the years is I can look over my Facebook feed, and honestly, a good 20% of people's profile pictures is pictures that I've taken of them doing fire dancing or cool stuff at a concert and whatever, and my watermark is there. So
Yeah.
I've found that I've actually gotten work through other people saying, "Hey, one of my friends has this profile picture, and I noticed your watermark and signature on there. Do you do this? How do I hire you?" So, despite the fact that I rarely ever post on Instagram, and I should probably do that, but I don't.
Yeah.
I feel like I've kind of tipped social media on its head to where the subjects of my photos are doing the social media part for me, and
That'll
I don't really have to do anything. And that's been really, really nice. I don't know how this applies to the broader aspects of photography. Like, I just don't know how this would work for real estate photography. But if you do like modeling or boudoir or fire spinning, I see how this would work. But I don't know if anyone has had this experience besides me. I'd be curious to know.
It depends on like what the market is, right? So
That's
like
fair.
with models and dancers and things like this, weddings, it's very slim. Like I think in weddings, a lot of times if they'll remember you if you meet them at the wedding, and there's not as many people, like if they were really important to that couple and they're really going to be like intrigued by the pictures, it's likely someone that was already there.
Sure.
Real estate, I think that is, I don't love corporate markets and all that.
I do.
You do. You can maybe support that. But I think with like our studio and our events, for example, is one thing I realized. It's a kind of a different field, right? But like I haven't been posting as much. We don't really post to the Cobalt site as much because we've been so busy. My
Sure.
girlfriend will try to like do collab posts and stuff every now and then.
Yeah.
But still, even then, like we don't watermark. I actually think like
I thought watermarking was outdated. I didn't think it did anything.
yeah, I've thought about it before, but then I was like, I don't think it's too many people doing it, and I don't want to be the one. But I honestly think it's genius, and I think it's a great idea. And if you're saying that you've experienced it working for you, then that's
Yeah,
I'm
just
probably
keep
going
doing
to
it.
start throwing my watermark website files or something.
I think it depends on the genre too.
I think it's
Yeah.
a niche use case. Yeah.
Yeah,
or like your really good stuff that you can like. Cause sometimes I'll make a lot of times where it's you have the full size files, and then you should share these ones online because they're web size, and they could have their printables with no watermark, and they can have their go share these ones that have your watermark. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
you know, I would say there's like two ways of going about it. You know, one is like the watermark, like what he's doing,
Mhm.
but then also you could just tell them like, hey, like post it wherever, just put my name in the caption.
So that's the thing is with the studio and the events, we always say like, in our group chats and stuff, like, hey, remember to tag us as the host and tag the makeup artist, obviously, and tag the
Yeah.
studio or our networking page. And then people listen, they do. And then we see days where like someone that came to one of our events or something will, share it, and they have a great following, and all of a sudden our page just gets like a bunch of follows, and then people reaching out and saying like, oh, your events are really cool. Like, how do we come to one? Or some people will even try to hire me sometimes if they see stuff, and I'm just like, what happened today? And I'll go look at Instagram like, oh, thanks so-and-so for posting this up. Like,
Yeah.
It's
cool.
about like throwing a wide net out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, exactly. Just branding is extremely important and not very easy. But wherever you have the opportunity, and if that's a watermark on your page and that's your way, then that's honestly genius. And especially if it's working, anything that works,
It's only stupid if it doesn't work, right?
yeah, it's only stupid if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're not losing money. You're not losing people. People obviously love your work and they want to show the picture that has your watermark on it in their profile picture. So they don't care about a dumb watermark. They know you deserve to have like credit. And so, yeah, it's genius.
Cool. Yeah, I was just curious because I recognize that I exist in a very niche space. So I didn't know if anyone else experienced that in their domains too. But it's always fun to check.
I think with real estate photography too, like people in real estate, they network all the time. So they'll be like, yo, I've been loving like the pictures you've been getting from so-and-so. I saw that watermark. Like, I'm going to hit them up. Yeah. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So a closing tradition that we have on this show is the previous guest leaves a question for the current guest, in this case, guests, plural, not knowing who they may be. So the question left for you two is, what was one of the most impactful lessons that you've either received or given?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Impactful
lesson.
Don't give a fuck what anyone thinks about you. Like,
That's
I
a
don't
great
know,
one.
honestly, especially with weddings, I used to try to be wedding industry, right? So I wear black all the time. So
Yeah.
I would change to a light blue, and I had like a nice tie, and I would try to be, I would not cuss. I cuss a lot. So like I would not cuss. I would not be myself. For a while, I would avoid getting my hand tattoos. So I wouldn't wear my rings. My
Yeah.
aesthetic would disappear from my person, and I would just become this like robot, right? And
Yeah.
I hated a lot of the situations I put myself into with clients that had no respect or care. The people weren't authentic that I worked for a lot of the time. Like I would just get hired by anyone because I was looking for any work. But I realized that one day I just was like, I'm tired of thinking I have to be someone or act a certain way to be a wedding photographer. And it started with a post, and I was like, worst wedding photographer in all of human history, just being a jackass like I normally was. And I got sent to Kauai like not long after that to do a wedding because of that post.
Ooh,
And then
good for you.
okay, like, so I'm going to wear black. I'm going to talk like me. I'm going to email like me. And like people were like, I like you. I resonate. You're a real human being. And I feel like I could talk to you like a friend. And it changed everything about my career. And now I'm never a professional. I'm just Michael, and I just do what I want. And everything's perfect. Like everything is really well because I'm just like, I don't care. I'm going to do what I want. You do what you want. And that's what I want from you. Just be you, be you. And so, yeah, don't give a shit what anyone thinks about you or what they say you should do. Just make your
I
own
love
path.
that. That resonates very deeply with me. What about you, Armand?
I would say charge what you're worth and don't let the self-doubt take over.
That's a good one.
There you
That's a good
go.
one.
Because you know what? There's so many times where I undercharged and I thought like, okay, maybe this is all it's worth, but then the budget was actually way higher and I left so much money on the table.
Yeah.
Or like someone was like, oh, maybe you should only charge this much, right? And then it ended up being like way higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's scary too, though, because then you're worried like you're going to lose that work. But that's something
you're gonna like price yourself out of it.
You got to get over it, and you have to try, because then you realize like what you just stay down on the bottom forever. I still have a problem with that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I should be charging a little more too, but it's a struggle, and I should listen to you a little better and bump those prices up.
Yeah, honestly, I think people need to do a better job of separating the business from the art, because we all got into it because of the art, right? We just enjoyed taking pictures and videos and whatever, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a business, right? You have to run it like a business, and you got to hit your quota every month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a technique that I've been using lately, this is more true for the corporate space than like working with someone directly as like a, I don't know, an individual, but for the corporate space, the
The
line
local.
that I've used is like, hey, you very clearly have a budget for this project. What is a number that makes you look good that would also be acceptable for me? So I try to figure out what their budget is and I'd be like, tell me your budget and let's try to price this maybe 10 to 15% below what your cap is. So you look good and then we can scale the package accordingly. Because even if it's way more than you would ever charge and now you discover that you can get a lot of money out of this, by
Mhm.
scaling your package or at least giving the illusion of scaling your package, it makes them feel like, they're getting a discount and on your side you can kind of work up and down your effort level to kind of meet at that price point, but in your mind you can set that level wherever you want it to be, but you kind of get that discussion out of the way and it kind of makes everyone feel good. But
Yeah.
the important part of that phrase is a budget that makes you look good, because people think
You-
about that and say, hey, if my budget's $10,000 and I'm able to book this videographer for seven, I can tell my boss that I saved us $3,000, and that makes them feel great about this interaction. Meanwhile, you're like, hey, I normally would charge $5,000 for this, but now I can get seven because I use my words well.
Yeah.
And that's the technique I've been working on.
Yeah. I think another thing is like just charging enough to where you, the photographer, feels comfortable.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you don't have to like walk away and be like, oh, maybe I could have charged more, or this or that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
But
you.
it's always hard because you always think like maybe I could have charged more.
Well,
I like your technique.
my biggest
Yeah,
fear
please.
that is losing the job. So that gives you more flexibility for
Sure.
them to respond and say something. But what I really like, what you said that resonates with something that was recent in my career, was you can scale your effort level. And so I recently had someone call because of the studio, and they make statues that they ship all over the world. They're really cool, high end, and like any general small session, I usually have like these packages for. And I was like, well, I think it fits into the presentation, which is this much, and I'll do that. And he was like, no, just give me your hourly. Like, what is your hourly? And I was like, I don't really have an hourly,
Yeah.
but let me just I like went around and I was like, okay, weddings, this many hours, these sessions, and it like landed on this number that I was like, oh, I do have an hourly. And I said, okay, well, it would be this much hourly. And he said, okay. And I was like,
Yeah.
right. And then I didn't value myself. The first time I shot for him, I was like, it's going to be a lot of head scratching because the statues are metal, and I was like, strobes and lights. I was like,
of course.
I honestly have to learn. And so the first time I worked for him, I told him it was 7 hours, but I'll charge you for 3.5. And he just paid me my hourly for the full 7. And so he was honestly just a really, really cool person. And so the second time he brought statues in again, and I knew that like he's going to pay. He wants the quality I had. He obviously came back and he's willing to like pay that rate, which would be higher than my presentation by like quite a bit. But I can put the heart and effort into that. And so I took my time. I did it the way that I knew that he would want it done instead of trying to rush through because I need to do something else to survive. And I was able to focus on that work because he had that budget. And the pictures are sitting on my computer right now, and they're so good because I was able to put that effort into it. So I like what you said about scaling your effort and having that flexibility in there when you communicate with them. So that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, another thing is like you have to also remember the value that you're giving someone, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So like when it comes to corporate, that's like mainly what I shoot, corporate commercial. Let's say I go and shoot for $5,000 for a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of money they're going to make off of those photos is way higher than $5,000.
Yeah.
So it's just a write off and an expense for them.
Yeah.
How I always like to present it is, whatever the budgets are. I'm like, so you're telling me that your budget is $2,000 to solve a $30,000 problem? Do you think that this is proportionate? And then that's how I'm able to negotiate a little bit.
Like, fine, we'll give you 10 times that. You're like, that's right.
See, that's what I'm talking about. You need the good like business tactics
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, there's so many photographers out there. Their work isn't amazing, right? But the business techniques are there.
They
And
got
that,
those fucking skills.
yeah, like business is almost more important than like the photo skills.
World sometimes how you market yourself and brand yourself and how you
Okay,
people
there you
you
go.
yours.
Photography tip of the day: go take a business class. Don't take a photography
Yeah.
class. Technical skills easy. Go take a business class and learn how to
Yeah, yeah.
market and pitch to clients.
I have like another 15 tips that I can give, and it sounds like you guys have that too, but maybe for a different podcast. Got to save the good stuff for a
We
different
could be
one.
here all day.
I'm like just
Exactly, yeah.
hey, like okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But no, Michael, Armand, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed having you here. Before we break, where can people find you, and where would you like to direct people's attention to?
You first.
I would just say my Instagram, Armand Noor Photo on Instagram. And then all the links are there for the website and I guess also the podcast.
Cracked Lens
yeah, yeah.
podcast.
Cracked Lens podcast.
And
Yep.
on
Okay.
YouTube.
Yep. YouTube,
Um,
Spotify, all the socials.
And for me, I'm all over the place because we have Cobalt Studios PDX, but the best place to find all links is Nilas, Nilas photography.com. And from there it goes to Wedding Photographer Guy, which is my wedding work, and Dark Hive, which is our networking and the studio. So nilasphotography.com and Instagram, all that stuff's on there. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will throw all of those links in the description box down below, make it real easy for people to find you. But thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'd love to chat again in the future. I had a great time, and hopefully you did too.
same, ditto.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
All
See you
right.
next time.